shoot! Hi, I'm the Moorlander and this is Moorlander EDC. Outside in the yard again, unfortunately. The UK has been thrown, especially England, has been thrown into a tier 4 lockdown, which makes it even harder to get outside. So I was hoping to get outside a little bit, actually into the countryside, into the moorlands this year. Might be February, March, April, May before I start to get out, but there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, and hopefully the latter part of the year we'll get out some more. But instead, for now, we are here to look at the SOG Terminus, which I thought was quite funny. So I've not purposely looked at any of the reviews online, but I do remember probably maybe close to a year ago watched a YouTuber from the US who called it a Terminus. I guess, you know, we both have inflections in the different ways that we pronounce things, but here in the UK I'm going to call this a Terminus. This is from SOG. Now, there's a few things that are almost kind of firsts with this. So obviously, it's not my first slip joint. I've had quite a few slip joints, especially here in the UK. This is a UK-friendly slip joint or a UK-friendly knife. There is no locking mechanism as such that you have to press to release this, to close it. However, I do have to get one elephant out of the room at this point. The detent, the retention on this, it might as well be a fixed blade. It is strong as, it really is. It's absolutely, well, I mean, you hold it there in the end, it's easier to close, but I've given this to my wife and said, oh, what do you think of this knife? And she's had difficulties closing it, and I'll get into a little bit why that differs. But this is my first SOG knife. It's also my first knife in TCS BD1 steel. The BD1 steel is, it's a budget kind of steel, but when you look at your budget steels similar to like a VG10, it's the higher end of a budget steel before you then start going on to the more premium steels. The steel itself, I've used this purely just for EDC use. You know, I've not been out, I've not battered this knife, but being able to keep an edge just for mainly day-to-day EDC use. It's kept a wicked sharp edge. The edge on this, actually, from the factory when you get this, is very sharp, and you do need to be careful. Some knives, you know, you're more than happy to touch the edge on them. With this, you definitely need to be careful because it is definitely a very sharp knife out of the box. Now we'll go into some features of this so you can get some measurements and stuff like that. Whilst I'm doing that, if you're new to the channel, please hit that like button. It helps me out massively for my YouTube recommendations and things. If you're a returner, please feel free to hit that subscribe button and the bell notification so you can see more content as it becomes available. Now let's get some specifications of this knife itself. So as mentioned, it uses the TCS BD1 steel, which is a tool steel very similar to your VG10. The length of the blade itself is right within those UK friendly guidelines. So it is a pretty much bang on 3-inch blade or 75mm. When the knife is completely closed, it measures in at 106mm. When it is open from the tip to the butt is 180mm. The stock that is used on this knife is quite a nice thick knife as far as knives are concerned. So what you get is quite a meaty, for an EDC style knife, you get quite a meaty 2.7 millimeters of thickness. As far as the height, from the belly of the blade itself up to the spine is 24 millimeters, and it's actually quite light as well. So as far as construction is concerned, the knife, for the scales are made from G10, which, as you know, we all know is quite a nice hard wearing material that it's good to grip, but also you get the structure that you get so that you know, there's hardly any movement in there. So that lends itself really to how light this knife is. As far as movement or any sort of, you know, I mean, that's my hand moving rather than actually, I mean, I can apply a lot of pressure to this. There's no give in it. There's also very little give that way. but that is mainly due to the detent system that is in here. Now, as a slip knot with a slip knot, as a slip joint with any sort of spring on the back here, you'd assume that as far as the detent is concerned, you'd have the two ball detents, and when you look into the frame itself, you'll be able to see that there are two arms in there. So what one would assume is, if the CRKT pillar here, it would be very similar to that. So as it comes out, the two ball detents on each side slip into those detents that are either side of the knife stock and hold it in place. So, you know, it's very free and easy to move. In reality though, the Terminus shares more in common with a Swiss Army knife. The detents on a Swiss Army knife, if I was to pull out here, the detents on a Swiss Army knife, if I get that in there, hopefully you'll be able to see that as it comes up, the back spring starts to lift, and it's the back spring here that holds the knife into place, and when it comes up to the top, you get a bit of a flick when it then becomes locked in. Now I use the term locked just to show that it's held there. It's not actually locked. There is no locking mechanism that keeps it in place. You can freely close the knife without having to press a button or unlock it. And the same applies with this. So instead, when it starts to swing round, you'll see that you have that, can I get it? You have that snap that holds it in place. So on the inside, in the frame itself, you have two arms, one on each side, that lift up rather than moving in and out to hold it in place. And this thing is tight. It really is tight. If you've ever worried about using a slip joint for the fact that, you know, you can push on the spine and there's a chance that it may close, using a knife like using a knife like the pillar, there is a chance that you can do that because it is quite easy to be able to push the knife down, and they have this really large finger choil in there, which means that, you know, you can close it, or at least it doesn't close because your finger holds it in place. With this knife, there's really less of a chance of you being doing that. On the back, you've got some incredibly aggressive jimping to hold your thumb in place. On the front here, where the ricasso comes down, there you've got a choil. You have this extended ricasso, which again you can use to stop your finger from sliding forward. But as far as being able to bring this round, you have to apply a lot of pressure to be able to do that. I follow a lot of gun channels. You know what I'd like is one of those, you know, where people test the poundage pressure on triggers, where they have one of those things that you pull it and it'll test. I think that would be perfect for that, just to be able to show you the differences on the amount of pressure that needs to be applied to be able to get both of these to lock. I lost my point there for a second, but I think where I was heading was, if you've ever had any worries that a slip joint is something that will close in your hand, the SOG Terminus, what it's done in there is very, very, very clever, and I think if you're one of those persons that has worried in the past, then you really don't need to worry about a knife like this. To be able to close it is very difficult, and you know, that's a positive thing. As far as construction wise, you have some pins on here. There's the main pivot pin at the front, and then there are 3 pins at the back. The 2 pins at the top here, these pins are used for the actual construction of the knife, whereas the third one here at the back, it has an ambidextrous pocket clip. The pocket clip itself is a deep carry pocket clip, and it is tip up. Whether you're a tip up or a tip down kind of guy, generally don't have any preferences. Tip up is fine by me, but it's a very clever way of doing it because it slides into the back rather than you having to take it out and then you end up with like a little recession where it should have been, or it moves it to the other side. On the inside, There is what looks like a plastic liner. I don't think that's G10. I think it's been textured to make it look like that. I really do think that that's plastic. And then you have some steel liners, which again help to bring some rigidity to this knife. Centering, as far as the centering is concerned, it's perfect. I'm sure if I put it under a microscope it might be like a billionth of a millimeter out, but as far as by eye is concerned, it is it's very, very, very well made. Another slight elephant to get out of the room on this one is, it's a SOG knife. It has that very tactical style look to it. I don't think there's any getting away from that. It looks very military, very, very tactical. Even down to the SOG little logo next to here on the back where it says the BD1 has a very kind of, well, it's a skull wearing a beret, so that screams that kind of tactical out to you. If there's anything that I would change about this knife, mainly, I don't really talk about ergonomics that much, but the one thing that I don't quite get is you almost have a finger choil here, so when you go to hold it, you go to hold it like that, because there's an indent here which your hand naturally goes to. But then what you also have is this strange kind of plateau or flat area here, which feels that's where your main finger should go to, and then your hand curls around there. But as far as ergonomics is concerned, it's not particularly friendly to the hand. I think if you were making feather sticks with this, you might find after a while that it creates a hot spot there. For EDC, general day-to-day use, it really hasn't bothered me that much. It's not a deal, it doesn't make me think, I need to send this back. It's just a strange choice. I'm not sure what the choice behind that was. I think if they had have lengthened this, it would have probably ended up going down, mainly because of the way that the pivot is placed. But yeah, it's a bit of a strange choice, but I don't think it detracts anything really from the knife itself. The knife is a great knife. If you look on sites like Heine.com, I think they're going for about £50, which I think might be £10 to £15 more than it probably should be. If you have a look on Knives and Tools at the moment, Knives and Tools are selling these for around about £30, £35, which I think is probably the better deal for this knife. I think if I was paying full price for it, I don't know, I think I'd probably just get it from Knife and Tools instead. Due to some of the Brexit restrictions, you might just check their website just to see if there's any issues bringing them in. Mainly it's around VAT and that sort of thing, but hey, yeah, Brexit, that's another video in itself. But as far as knives is concerned, for my first SOG knife, my first BD1 knife, I'm really happy with this. Solid construction, it's a good steel. The huge selling point really is that back detent, the way in which it does that. Other knife makers should do that because of the concerns that people have about slip joints and them closing on your fingers. But absolutely amazing knife. Full disclosure at this point, I purchased this wasn't sent to me. This hasn't affected the outcome of this review. Yeah, there you go. Cool, so I'll leave some links for this to the SOG website, to Knife and Tool, to Amazon if I can find that in the US. If you choose to use those links, then that helps to support the channel, and that would be great. If not, it's all good. Links. Always forget this bit. So I'm also on Instagram. You can find me at Moorlander_EDC, and there you go, all good, cool. So for now, stay safe, stay Moorlander, and stay EDC.